this is another great game that had probably the biggest attack of any of the games I had, that was the most successful at least, with kind of the longest calculation. So we'll kind of go through these. I'll kind of get to the pivotal moments. The setup that I have is very similar to kind of like a reverse London system, which is weird, which I tried to go for this position in a few games. There's another game where I did this and I lost. It was the game I lost in the tournament, which wasn't very good, and it was a very quick loss. But that was after I played this game. So castle, and basically already you can kind of see there's a lot of pressure basically on this pawn possibly. This gets opened up, this gets opened up, there's checks, there's rook checks, there's bishop getting into the game. So I knew I was doing something right here. And once he did this move, I felt even more confident because I was like, all right, now you've just kind of cut the queen out of the game. So with a well-placed take of the pawn, and it says you should just go for it basically. But I took the safer route. And then here you throw in the bishop check. It's not even the best move, but it is winning. Takes, and then basically I throw a knight check here. I know the engine says e4 is the best move. Why I didn't do e4, because I didn't want to give this knight a potential square to jump to and capture this piece if the attack fails, which it doesn't have to fail, but I was worried that it might fail. And so by doing this, I'm basically limiting this knight from being active in the game a little bit longer. Move over here, I go for the pretty material approach, which is I just want to get the rook. So I say, let me do all that, and I'm just going to get the rook. Keep moving pieces in, queen check. Basically, this is not a very advisable strategy because obviously I'll just pick up more material here, and the threat is just outrageous. So you don't want to put the pawn up, you want to move the king. Check here, trade some pieces. Now I throw the check in. Now obviously if you move the king somewhere, you're obviously going to lose the queen. So you have to throw basically this knight here to defend it, and then at this point I just get to pick up more material. It basically says don't even worry about it, just go straight for this. This is more than good enough. But I felt like it was possible for me to win this queen somehow, so I said let's take here, and now I've got this threat, which is very, very annoying. The best move here is to do king c3 so you get out of the pin, but he moved his knight over to defend the rook, and so I get to play bishop f5. I pick up the queen, and then it's just a matter of surviving some exchanges, getting this position. Obviously, there's only a few ways out of this situation. This doesn't get you out of checkmate because obviously I threaten checkmate right here. And if you're not careful, this is actually checkmate as well, which is crazy. So whether you move this pawn, I can actually checkmate you here, or I can checkmate you here, kind of whatever I'm feeling like. Best move engine says here is just, again, sacrifice the knight, but obviously this is just madness. So the game was over pretty quickly. Because basically what's happening here is I'm obviously losing the game. I'm going to be down even more material. His bishop is way better than mine. His pawns are going to queen soon. His rook is super active in the 7th rank, and mine's doing a pretty good job. But this is where basically I started making moves for tricks with the hope that maybe something will work out. Maybe he'll blunder a piece, and I'll let this video decide whether that actually happened. So I did a check here again. I knew these weren't the best moves, but I was just thinking anything I can do to see if I can try to force repetition or if I can get the king off of that bishop. He moves his king back, which is definitely, I think, the best move there. And now, I'm making more tricks. I'm trying to threaten this piece. Okay, he moves up. I move over here. Let me see if I can attack this pawn and see if he just wants to basically trade everything off, which he did. Move forward. Okay, now I'm going to go pick up another pawn. I'm still feeling bad. I'm down more material than I was earlier because of my tricks. But maybe, just maybe, I can hold a draw. And this was an important moment of the game where his advantage, I think, started slipping, and he made a crucial mistake right here. The only problem is, basically, he's got these 2 pawns, so basically I have no way of actually winning the game. If our rooks go off the board and it's 2 pawns and a bishop versus a knight, I'm going to lose unless I can somehow pick up both of those pawns. But here he made a crucial mistake, is that his bishop is the only thing defending this rook, and so he started making his pawn push. But that allowed me to do a move that I wasn't sure if it was going to work, and I'll explain why, which is I take the bishop, he takes back, and I take the pawn. Now here's the problem. My king's here in the 5th rank, so that's good. So I'm at least behind this pawn. The only problem is I have only 1 knight. I don't have a bishop. A bishop would be amazing. If I had a bishop, I'd be able to just set him somewhere over in the corner. I'd be able to hunt down this pawn successfully, and I could just sack the bishop when the time comes. But obviously I don't have a bishop. I have the knight. So this is a crazy point where the engine, and I just had to assume this was the case, otherwise I was losing. That would be fine, obviously. Just assume this is drawing. You do have to be super careful here, because obviously the moment this pawn moves forward, I have to go after it. So I can't, let's just say that he moves here. I can't dilly-dally and make the same pawn move, because obviously he's going to queen. And so if he makes a pawn move, I have to run after it, and I am just in time to stop him. But obviously, am I just in time to stop this pawn? That remains to be seen. So I make the knight move because he hasn't moved this yet. And obviously what I wanted to do if it was my turn is I want to be able to throw this fork in. So let's just say we just make some, these are just like random moves, but okay, we do this. I would love to be able to throw a check in, move, take the piece, and then if he goes after it, I can just run after this pawn and the game is drawn. It's obviously not what happened because it was his turn, so he moves forward, so I'm forced. I have to move forward here. There is theoretically this way of checking here and then you move the knight over here. That's what that's all about. So it's not check here to win this pawn, it's check here to move this knight over, because this obviously loses. So, well, yeah, it loses because you don't take, you push the pawn forward here. So that's not the reason why you should move the knight, but I didn't do that nonetheless. Okay, here's an important part of the game where I started doing some calculations, and I realized this pawn, if it moves forward, it'll be on his turn, and I'll move over here and I'll take it. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized I think there's an interesting knight dance where no matter where he moves his pawn, I can actually just maneuver my knight around. If he moves there, I move back here. If he moves there, I move up here. If he moves the pawn forward, I can take it. And so there's only one more question you have to figure out is, obviously, if you move here, I'll offer a check again. Obviously, if you move the pawn forward, I'll take it. And obviously, if you move your king randomly over here, for instance, then I don't have to do anything, and actually I get a free tempo to march over here and take this pawn, because at the end of the day, this pawn's not going to be able to move forward, and then we're going to draw the game. The only thing I had to figure out is, what happens if you move here? And this is where I was a little concerned, because I was going, well, okay, I can't obviously move my knight back. If I move my knight to these squares, he's going to move his pawn forward, and he's going to queen. And then I realized I have this really, really fun move, knight e5. And this basically puts it back on his position where it says, make a move, I dare you. If you move this pawn forward, I'm going to go after it. If you move your king anywhere, like here, I'm going to check you, and we're going to get back into the same pattern. If you move the pawn forward, I'm going to check you here, and then I'm going to win it. And if you try to move forward over here, let's see, if you move like this, I'll check you. If you push the pawn forward, I'll check you. And if you move here, then I've got this move. Let's see, which move is it? I'm supposed to move knight f7. Yes, because obviously move down here, just basically a repeat of the position, and if you move over here, then I'll just do this, and again, we're in the same place. So we did this kind of dance for a little bit. This is basically all the moves that happened, and then he reached a point where he realized it was a draw, and then we agreed to a draw right about here. So that was a super interesting game, incredible. I would never have guessed that in this position that I was somehow going to be able to stop both of these pawns, but that's just chess for you. This was another game I played near the end of the tournament where I got paired basically with a higher player, so I got absolutely demolished. I basically tried to do a similar setup to one that I had done in a different game, but it didn't work out so well. And let's see, let me get to kind of some pivotal points. This was a point where I basically realized there's an opportunity for a tactic here, but I knew that it would be okay because the material will be equal basically as if you take this pawn. Obviously, he's got this bishop check. He wins a pawn. You take the bishop. He wins the knight. And I was thinking to myself, I think that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. I've got a fine piece here. Like, we traded a knight for a bishop, so at the end of the day he still has the bishop, but I thought this was totally fine. I think what the problem was is I knew I was playing a higher rated player, and so I started making just terrible moves because I was afraid in the game, and so I missed some important tactics that might have meant I could have won the game. So game goes on, I make some kind of silly moves. This one is bad basically because you get in this kind of situation and it's just not pretty at all. So I wasn't super keen to do any of that, but he didn't see it. Obviously, you can't. You move the king back. It says move up, which is just I'm not doing that. Obviously, you can't take here because you drop the queen, and this is when I realized I started being in a kind of a problem situation because there's no easy way for me to get out of this pin right now because there's no easy way to defend this queen because this bishop is doing such a good job. So I thought, all right, I have to stop the onslaught. So let me at least just temporarily stop the onslaught. Goes here, and now I defend. And this is the problem, is I missed, because I wasn't thinking about winning the game, I was just thinking about surviving, is I missed this amazing tactic, which attacks the knight, or attacks the rook. There's no easy way. You can't, the best thing you can do basically is rook takes e3 to sacrifice the exchange, because you move the rook anywhere, even if you move it to a square like this, I'm just in time to pick up the piece, and you don't have any good checks that win you anything. I mean, this is the best you get. But obviously, I'm totally fine at this point. He's out of checks. We just trade the materials off, and now I'm up a full piece. Didn't see that in the game because I wasn't looking for it because I was under attack. So I said, let's just defend my material. He moves his rook over. Now I have to be really careful. Obviously, this is not going to be a great move because I'm going to get checkmated in 2 moves. So the only option that really seemed available to me was pushing the pawn forward. And here I thought, maybe I'm going to be okay. Obviously, he can't really move his... He can move his piece back here if he wanted to, but besides that, I thought, okay, well, maybe if he moves his rook, or moves his bishop all the way back here, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I have some cool moves after I, move my rook in the center, and this is defended. Maybe I can go over here, and I'm harassing the rook, and I'm harassing this pawn, and I'm harassing this pawn. Maybe everything will be okay. Unfortunately, it's not what he did. He took. And again, that was a brilliant sacrifice on his part. Now, I even got stupider, and I said to myself, you know what? I bet if I can just walk my king over here to this side of the board, I might survive temporarily the attack, because I'm only down a pawn. Maybe I can survive. So I made the really foolish move of not taking, or not moving my queen. Even taking is a little bit better than what I did, basically, all things considered, because this is just terrible, and it leads to just all sorts of attack. And at least there's a good thing that Yasser Seirawan says, who's a famous grandmaster. He basically says, you should just take a sacrifice, even something like the Greek gift sacrifice if someone does it, because if you don't take this blunder, if you don't take the sacrifice, you're still losing. But if you're losing, you might as well be up a piece. So I might as well be up a piece, but I didn't do that because I was afraid. And then he got even worse, this awful attack. Obviously, I can't take here, or I drop the rook. And obviously, I need to do something about this rook. Even moving it here, we're just going to get absolutely walloped. And so I moved there because I thought maybe I can escape to this little window and I can climb through here, basically. That was a terrible idea. I moved here. Moving here just did not seem to be a reasonable option to me, but here we are. The only problem with taking this piece, obviously, is you get checked here and you're going to lose the queen. And then, obviously, moving here just seemed crazy because I'm going to get in this kind of a situation, and then I'm going to lose the queen. So, but hey, I'm up a bishop. So I moved over here, he checks here, I move up, he checks here. And this is where it got really bad because I realized if I move over here, he just does this. I'm going to sacrifice the queen, and I'm going to get checkmated. So that doesn't work. But I also looked at this variation. If he starts with this move, then I go over here, then he goes over here, then I go over here, it's basically still pretty freaking bad, because even in this situation, he picks up the rook, and then it's still, it's looking pretty tough. I'll tell you that much. So he checks with the bishop instead. I move back here thinking, all right, well, he's going to check me again with the rook, and I'm going to lose my queen. But that's not what happened, and I just missed completely the fact that queen f3 is checkmate. And with that, I lost my first game of the tournament. I draw one other, but I completely lost this one. Moment, I'm going to start commenting on this game. This was against the same player who beat me in the previous round, and so this was kind of the redemption round here. Obviously, I made some mistakes in the opening, mostly like, what the heck is that bishop doing on d6, but we're going to press on. Here, I was actually pretty happy because it allowed me to trade what I thought was maybe his best piece, was this awesome bishop. Kind of a big part of the Nimzo-Larsen is that you have this amazing kind of bishop attacking the king side, and so I was pretty happy to be able to trade this, because then also I got his other bishop. Now obviously you have to be careful here, because you don't want to necessarily, you can't move the bishop over because you'll lose it. You can't move the rook over because you'll lose the knight. So the only move here that works is bishop back. Technically, this is a move, but I just didn't really see that as a realistic possibility, because I just thought, how are we getting out of this one? Now theoretically, you have this move, and that forces the queen out, and then theoretically, you win this piece, and then over here. But I didn't see that in the game, and he stole material, so I said no bueno. The only reason why I think it works is because you have crazy moves like knight f3 check, which if you take here, I can throw in rook takes, and you're not able to take this bishop, because then you lose the other knight. Having said that, material is equal here, and this was a crazy transposition that I didn't want to go to, so I said, let me just move the knight over. And then I'll move my queen out after I set up some more attack, basically. Here I saw an opportunity to trade the queens, so I went for it. This is an important moment. You can't chase the knight away with this move, which you definitely want to do, because of the fact that he comes in there. Well, first you can basically get away with knight takes d6 if you want to, and go for the bishop, but also you can throw in this move first, and then once I moved away, then you can go in for the knight, and then the bishop's even worse than when it started. And this is just like plus 2.6 for white, so I wanted to avoid all of that. So as much as I wanted to keep the bishop, I had to take, and basically this we did a little knight dance here. Just wanted to chase him out. I felt pretty good at this point, not that I was going to win, but that I at least made it out of the opening, and that I was surviving, so we're going to kind of keep going. And I felt even better here, because I was like, okay, his pieces are not pushed back. I'm now kind of in an attacking mode. I've got my pieces up. These pawns are pretty good. His pawns didn't seem quite as good. This just seemed like a desperate move. And so I felt a little bit like I had some good energy here. This obviously makes it very hard to play this pawn, because you'll lose here, so it just forces more moves. And this is a great outpost for the knight, for now at least. And now I felt really good. I'm not winning by that much here, but I just thought, man, his pieces are back on the back rank. This knight just seems like it doesn't really have a great future. On this square, I mean, where's it going? I've got these squares defended. I can push this if I need to. I just felt pretty good. So we move forward, and this is a pretty important point of the game. I said I need to take control of this file before he does, and even if he moves a move over like this, I would just maybe do, I don't know what I would do here. I think I would have taken, and then just once he takes back, this pawn is obviously here, so he can't take control of the file, so I've got control, so I was happy with that. And now I said, okay, let me get full control. Let me put both my rooks, because if this knight ever leaves, there might be some mating opportunities here. He moves his rook back. I move the rook over. The reason for this move, to be completely honest, I kind of forget the exact logic behind it, but it had something to do with I don't want any shenanigans with any pawn pushes or any sacks and then taking. And, a missed win was pushing forward here, which totally makes sense in hindsight, because it basically makes it very hard for the knight to get back out again. He moves it back forward. I move forward here. In hindsight, this was a bit of a mistake because this move isn't as good for me as it seems like it is good. But I just realized that basically he can just do a lot of taking here. Rook takes e4, take, and this is actually equal. We have the same amount of material. Maybe I'm a little more dominant. His rooks are disconnected, but it didn't seem so bad for him. So that I realized I shouldn't take here. What I should do is I need to get my rook up. Because what I realized is after this move, if he takes this pawn, I actually don't have to take back because I can actually push this pawn forward, and then it gets really dangerous. Yes, my knight's undefended, but I was feeling pretty positive. I pushed the knight forward, and this is where he made a pretty big mistake. What he has to do to keep the game alive, theoretically, is play knight h4, which just seems kind of crazy, but it's not as crazy as it looks because you play this move. I'm supposed to play knight g5, which makes sense, but if you try to take this, you're going to lose this piece, and then again, we're at the same kind of equal material place. And so what I looked at, there's not really any good place to move this knight. You move it here, for instance, and you just get absolutely clobbered because all these squares are taken. You move back over here, check. You know, this just didn't seem so bad. Anywhere he takes, I'm moving forward. I've got this pawn. What the heck is this king doing back there? My rook's a lot more active. I felt really, really good at this point. So, all I have to say, he did, unfortunately, the only bad move, which is to take the knight on e4, which works in a ton of other positions because this leads to a forced checkmate. No matter where you go, you can't take the knight, or you can't take the pawn, you can't move up. So no matter where you go, back here, I slam the rook back on h1, and it's checkmate. And this was really nice to finally get a game where I won against this guy because he was really good, and that ended the tournament.